Hello there. This is a program from the Newark and District Parkinsons group under the title, You Just Have to Care. It's becoming increasingly apparent that the challenges and hazards of coronavirus will be with us for some time to come, and our activities will be somewhat restricted into the future. In the meantime, people with Parkinson's disease still need your care and attention. So this program is aimed at you, the carers. Partly with some information and possible advice, but mainly to say thank you for your care and devotion. Full-time carers, whether caring for a loved one who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, where the care takes up 24 hours of 7 days, or whether a professional carer working in a care home with Parkinson's sufferers as part of your clients. You often need to know about Parkinson's disease, PD, or Parkinsonism. What does it mean to have Parkinson's, and how does it affect the people who are suffering from it? This is an introduction to Parkinson's disease. Its main theme is that it's not just a tremor. No, it's not just a tremor. So let's start with a quick look at the history of Parkinson's disease. Why is it called Parkinson's? You've probably guessed it's a person's name. James Parkinson was born in Shoreditch, London on the 11th of April 1755. He was the eldest of 5 children, including a brother named William and a sister named Mary. He was a keen scholar, studying geology and paleontology, as well as medicine and apothecarology, which was the sort of artistic form of the modern science of pharmacology. At the age of 29, he was registered and improved as a surgeon by the City of London. He was also a Fellow of the London Geological Society, which at the time was the foremost for geological studies anywhere in the world. He set up his medical practice at his home at No. 1 Hoxton Square, Shoreditch, and these premises burnt down shortly after his death in December of 1824. He left behind a wife, Mary Dale, and 8 children. He was never to know the fame that awaited him as a physician. For his lifetime, his greatest, though modest, claim to fame was in paleontology, where 4 rather obscure fossils were named after him. But in 1817, it was this minor London physician who finalized his observations of 3 of his patients and 3 men who were living in the area, all of whom were suffering from paralysis agitans. Based on his observations, he wrote an essay on the shaking palsy. The physician was, of course, James Parkinson, but the condition was not yet known as Parkinson's disease. It was known as paralysis agitans, or the shaking palsy, or nodding paralysis. Paralysis agitans literally translates as nodding paralysis, and it had been known for a very long time, but had never been properly understood. In fact, it was even described in tomb hieroglyphics from ancient Egypt. Parkinson's analysis identified the main characteristics of the condition: resting tremor, abnormal posture and gait, paralysis and diminished muscular strength, and James Parkinson also noticed the way that the disease progressed and degenerated over time. A little later, in France, Jean-Martin Charcot was a leading exponent of the new discipline of neurology, and between 1868 and 1881 he made further and much more detailed studies of the shaking palsy, which he believed was a neurological condition. Among other matters, he introduced the term bradykinesia, and it was Jean-Martin Charcot who championed the renaming of the disease in honor of James Parkinson. Hence, we now have Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, this came after Parkinson's death. Although Jean-Marie Charcot took up the study a long way forward in terms of symptom recognition and definition, he was not able to totally control the symptoms, though he could slow the progress of the deterioration. Surprisingly, a first-century Romano-Greek physician, Galen, had recommended a treatment from the mucuna plant, which was rich in L-dopa. This for a condition that must also have been Parkinson's disease. Bradykinesia is literally the slow or diminished movement of body musculature. Trembling in the hands, arms, legs, jaw and face, stiffness in the arms, legs and trunk, slowness of movement, poor balance and coordination, a shuffling gait when walking. These symptoms may not be wholly apparent in a sufferer, as the condition develops differently in almost every case. In 1897, a student of Charcot proposed that Parkinson's disease might be caused by ischemic lesions. His name was Edouard Brisson. And in 1912, Dr. Frederick Louis described a pathological finding of lesions in the affected brains. These lesions became known as Lewy bodies. And in 1919, Konstantin Tetyakov proposed that the substantia nigra was the main cerebral structure affected by Lewy bodies. But this was not widely accepted until it was positively confirmed by further studies published by Rolf Hasser in 1938. In the 1950s, Arvid Carlsson identified dopamine as the main neurotransmitter deficient in Parkinson's disease cases. He was eventually awarded the Nobel Prize for this work. The condition is now accepted as a complex deterioration of the substantia nigra, part of the brain, and a failure to produce the chemical dopamine. The complex nature of this failure makes diagnosis and treatment difficult. Many people suffering from Parkinson's disease today believe they had symptoms long before diagnosis. There is no specific chemical, psychological, or medical test to diagnose PD. There is no single system that will definitely diagnose PD. Almost everyone displays symptoms in a different order and at different intensities. Some people don't even display some of the symptoms at all. Everyone develops the symptoms slowly, and every symptom may indicate some other condition. PD is a collection of symptoms, and not everyone is a collector. There is no definite cause for Parkinson's, so there can be no specific cure. This also means there is no way of preventing Parkinson's disease from developing. Because the condition itself is notoriously difficult to diagnose in its early stages, and because there is no specific test or indicator, and none of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease are unique to the PD condition, symptoms have to be observed, and the more Parkinson's symptoms that are observed, the more certain a PD diagnosis becomes. It's almost a matter of collecting a list of symptoms until a neurological specialist can diagnose Parkinson's disease with certainty. The clincher is usually that PD will respond to dopamine replacement therapy. But it's becoming increasingly usual for a consultation with your GP to look at one condition only at each consultation. But Parkinson's displays a range of apparently disconnected symptoms that might make positive diagnosis elusive. Observation by full-time carers can sometimes speed up a positive diagnosis. The chances are that for a diagnosis to be made, several indicative symptoms will be displayed. Usually, at least one of the so-called bradykinesia symptoms will have to be displayed, and perhaps a couple of other indicative symptoms. PD symptoms usually emerge slowly, which makes early diagnosis of the condition particularly difficult. So let's take a closer look at what we should look for and why. And remember, it's not just a tremor. So, you probably know already that PD is a long-term degenerative disorder of the central nervous system. It mainly affects the body's motor systems. As it progresses, non-motor symptoms become more apparent. The symptoms usually emerge slowly, which means some symptoms can appear long after diagnosis. How is it caused? We don't know. How is it cured? At present, there is no specific cure for Parkinson's disease, but it responds well to treatment. Yes, it responds well to treatment, and this should be a cause for optimism. Parkinson's disease does not of itself threaten life. It does not even shorten life in any meaningful sense. However, care will be needed, as some of the symptoms can put sufferers in life-threatening situations. How can this happen? For example, a loss of balance is characteristic. Sometimes the head goes faster than the feet and the person pitches forwards. Inevitably, this leads to trips, falls and stumbles. But some falls can occur in hazardous situations, and these can sometimes be dangerous. As it progresses, non-motor symptoms become more apparent. These could be present as symptoms before a diagnosis of PD is made. Some symptoms will almost certainly flag up sometimes before diagnosis because there is no single diagnostic test for Parkinson's disease. These symptoms might sometimes be dismissed by the medical profession because they are minor symptoms that do not seem to relate to any specific condition. Hindsight is 20/20 vision, but keeping records of even minor symptomatic occurrences may help accurate diagnosis later. We know that symptoms occur in two very distinct classes. Class 1 is the motor symptoms. These include tremor, rigidity, slowness of movement, falls and dizziness, freezing, which can mean the muscles literally freeze immobile. It can happen when standing up from a chair, or when walking through a doorway, or even when crossing a road, and under those circumstances it's obviously going to be quite hazardous. Muscle cramps and dystonia are also motor symptoms. This is when the muscles stiffen and shorten. It can result in severe pain and discomfort, and sometimes it occurs when carrying out particular tasks or activity. We do not suggest that carers can self-diagnose Parkinson's, but diagnosis tends to rely on building up a list of symptoms. Some symptoms are clinchers, and some are simply indicative. It will help to keep a record of significant symptoms and report them. The following form might help to structure some of your observations. The form shows the main bradykinesia symptoms down the left-hand side, and across the top an opportunity to approximate the frequency with which those symptoms occur, and then mark the appropriate box. If the symptoms never occur, or only occur very rarely, or only once or twice a year, for these cases no score needs to be applied. If more often than once or twice a year, say every 2 months or every month, well, these symptoms are indicative. So when you observe them, score 2 per item on the form. If the symptoms are occurring every week, this is more significant. So score 4 per item for every symptom that you observe. And if the symptoms are occurring daily or almost all the time, then these are important, and a score of 8 per item should be entered onto the form. Any score of 8 plus is worth following up with your GP or with your Parkinson's specialist. Sometimes it's worth keeping these scores over a period of time, because you will probably never get to see all of the symptoms. We know there is no definite cause for Parkinson's, so there can be no specific cure. We also know that people can experience symptoms of Parkinson's before anyone can achieve a diagnosis. But when the diagnosis is made, the treatment should quickly bring the symptoms under some sort of control. We recommend listing the observed symptoms as and when they occur and how they affect the person, and also noting when and how these symptoms disappear with treatment, and any symptoms that have not yet disappeared. This will usually build up confidence in the treatment regime. Also, we recommend you note any new symptoms as they appear after diagnosis and their effect, and bring these to the attention of the GP or Parkinson's disease specialist. The new symptom might require a slight change to the medication. But remember, no symptoms are specific to Parkinson's disease, so any single symptom might indicate something entirely different that might need attention. The second distinct class is non-motor symptoms, which are a little more difficult to define and often cause more anxiety. They include low blood pressure, bladder and bowel problems, restless leg syndrome, fatigue, sweating and skin dampness, sleep disorders, eating, swallowing and saliva control, speech and communication control, eye problems, foot care issues. Sorry, this list isn't complete yet. It can also include mouth and dental issues, frozen facial expression, memory and thinking problems, anxiety, hallucinations and delusions, depression, apathy, dementia, and general pain and discomfort. So it's not just a tremor. We know people will be anxious and possibly even become stressed about the range of symptoms that seem to be normal for the condition. But it's very unlikely that anyone will get all or even most of these symptoms. And because the symptoms are known to exist as side effects of the condition, treatments are usually available if you tell your clinical specialist or your GP about them. When your sufferer is lucid, it can sometimes help for them to realize that unusual and somewhat uncontrollable emotional responses can be part of the condition. It sometimes helps to have a fears and anxieties questionnaire. This lists some of the things that might be causing anxiety. Feeling unusually nervous or concerned when in a group, feeling threatened or even frightened when in a crowd, unusual impatience when waiting in a queue, feeling frustrated and nervous when holding up a queue, unduly annoyed or frustrated when people keep you waiting, flustered and nervous when you are keeping people waiting, annoyed when you are unable to do what you should find an easy task, unusually impatient when something goes wrong, finding yourself losing your patience without good cause, often finding you want to be alone even when in company, and sometimes you lose concentration even when you are trying to engage, and sometimes you find it difficult to control your urges and habits. A real difficulty for Parkinson's disease sufferers is that a Parkinson's sufferer can think they look like this. But in fact, this is the image they are conveying. PD sufferers can also show real and genuine aggression when confronted by people who are apparently provoking or annoying or challenging them. Care should be taken to allow the anger to dissipate before intervening. The person will probably be very upset and remorseful once the anger has passed. Difficulties with memory recall can sometimes be a symptom. This can often happen quite early in the condition. When it is observed, it can cause great anxiety for everyone concerned. The main fear for the sufferer is that this will deteriorate, leading to Alzheimer's. But in Parkinson's disease, it won't. In Alzheimer's, the memories never get into the brain in the first place. PD can lead to dementia, but this is simply a difficulty in recalling memories that are in the brain somewhere. Therefore, the PD sufferer should be engaged with patients when memory slips. Prompts, clues and hints can help, but try to let the sufferer sort it out for themselves. Even if it takes a while, make sure they know when they have successfully recalled the memory. It's not just a tremor. It might sometimes help for sufferers' families to understand the possible non-motor symptoms of Parkinsonism. It should be pointed out that these should not be looked for, but simply recognized and accepted as part of the condition if and when they are observed. They should be noted and possibly reported to your clinical support, as there will always be treatment modifications that can be made to counter the new symptoms. And although there are anticipated side effects that might occur in PD, they can also have other causes. We won't go through this slide, as the list is quite a complicated one, but you can get copies of it if you think it might help. We'll just highlight some of the unexpected symptoms that occur regularly. Skin can sometimes unexpectedly feel damp with perspiration. Some people have difficulties with their throat constricting when they're swallowing, and this is often linked with difficulty controlling saliva, which results in dribbling. Some people lose their senses of taste and smell, and for some sufferers, this loss can be almost entire. Some people have difficulty keeping their feet and toenails in good order. Sufferers might also experience mouth ulcers, gum pains, and toothache when there is no actual tooth decay. Sometimes sufferers might see things which, when they look more closely, disappear. And sometimes some people will actually engage with people or animals and then find that they're not even there. Sometimes you cannot be bothered, even though you know you should be. And sometimes you feel so flat that you wonder why you are here. In conclusion, a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease is difficult in itself. Once the sufferer has come to terms with the diagnosis, the surprise is how invasive the condition can become. The side effects are often a greater cause for concern than the expected bradykinesia symptoms. Non-motor symptoms usually cause the most concern. Non-motor symptoms cannot be predicted, so they often cause real shock and anxiety when they do present. PD is as much a psychological challenge as it is a physical one. The psychology is sometimes missed. Carers can be real morale builders and psychological supporters. Thus, our theme has been, it's not just a tremor. Slowness of thought makes other people impatient with the PD sufferer. Loss of balance is common, resulting in falls that can sometimes cause debilitating and serious injury, but these are often put down to an excess of alcohol or just straightforward carelessness and get very little sympathy. Loss of a sense of taste and smell can mean that social and family meals can become stressful. You might be asked, what did you think of that meal? And it's a bit embarrassing to have to say, I didn't taste a thing. Sleep disorders and insomnia can put strains on emotional relationships between partners and with the rest of the family. Loss of facial expression can mean even those close misinterpret the sufferer's moods and feelings. Incontinence is embarrassing and can even become degrading. Constipation is stressful and can sometimes be quite painful. Illusions and hallucinations can be frightening. Emotional difficulties leading to depression and apathy can become serious enough to induce suicidal thoughts and behaviors. So it's not just a tremor, and it needs an alert carer to safeguard against some of these ills. It's okay for a Parkinson's disease sufferer to be alone in their own thoughts and interests. But remember, apathy and depression can develop without comradeship and social interaction. And this can happen to partners and carers as well as the sufferers. So take care of yourselves as well. Coronavirus isolation has really pushed this threat to a limit. Newark District Parkinson's Group. Anyone and everyone is welcome to join us. You don't have to have Parkinson's. You don't even have to care for someone with Parkinson's. You just have to care. For more information and support, email hilkey@btinternet.com or call Keith on 01636 679 261. And remember, it's not just a tremor. Thank you for watching this program, and we hope you found it useful. Goodbye now.